Hi, Roz.
Alex in New Jersey.
Morning, Alex.
Wow. Oh, it's like old home week.
Almost ready, Billy.
Celebrity Square.
Hello, Theo. There's Theo.
Hi, Roz.
Hi. No, Billy.
You may have to step on mute.
Paula. Hi.
Hi.
I'm not going to say hello.
Oh, look, my youngest fan.
It's baking.
Oh, wow.
Let's just give everyone a chance to get into the room. I think we've got a few more people that we're expecting. But I would like to say thank you very much to everyone for coming along this afternoon. I think you're in for a real treat. I was just having a little chat with Roz earlier, and it sounds like it's excellent. If I could ask you to mute your microphones for the time being, because we'll get started soon, and it's good that we don't have any feedback or background sound while Roz is trying to talk. And Roz has her technical assistant with her today. Gordon, get your head in there. He's pressing the arrows. He's pressing the arrows for Roz's slideshow, and he's an astronomer. So we've got a very balanced, starry evening this afternoon. And Gordon has told me to tell you that if any of you want to know specific information about lunar nodes, he's your man. So don't forget about that. And as usual, if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat box and I can ask Roz. She also told me before we started that she's got 40 slides and they're all numbered. So if you can jot down the number of the slide, if you've got a question that refers to a particular slide, that will help her place the question. So we'll get started and I'll let any latecomers in as we go along. But first of all, I would just like to say thank you so much to Roz. I think this is going to be a really brilliant talk, and she's doing some really unusual and special research in ancient Egypt. And I think that, she was telling me earlier that a lot of traditional academic Egyptologists haven't taken astrology very seriously, but it's a big, important thing to think about, because I think it's important when researching ancient Egypt to get into the mindset of ancient Egyptian people, and that's something Roz is really trying to do. So without any further ado, I shall hand over to you, Roz.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Before getting started, I sometimes get coughing fits. If this happens, bear with. I have my water, inhaler, and trusty understudy Gordon, who can step in to speak. And as we just said, he feigns ignorance about Egyptology and especially astrology, but can answer any astronomy question should anyone ask. So welcome. You are here today to find out about astrology in ancient Egypt. And to use a catchphrase, it's complicated. Some of you may be versed in Egyptology, while other curious participants are more familiar with the basics of astrology theory and practice. As ologies go, astrology and Egyptology together are quite disparate fields of studies within academia. And my experience over 30 years is that there seems to be an unwritten rule that never the twain should meet. So here we have the Dendra Zodiac drawing from the Napoleonic expedition, and they would have only recognized what we've done in colors, the signs of the zodiac. So when Napoleon's savants reached Dendra on the 25th of May in 1799, and in a chapel on the temple rooftop clapped eyes on the circular zodiac, now in the Louvre, they were more than excited and encouraged by what they beheld. They couldn't read hieroglyphs. This ability had to wait a further 23 years before Champollion published his work on decipherment. But the savants were able to read the astrology art, indicating to them that the ancient Egyptians had recorded the zodiac. So early basic hieroglyphs evolved and expanded over the millennia. what we might regard as pure Egyptian astrology also evolved and developed in a long gestation. Along the way, the meanings of some concepts, such as the decans, may have changed over time. So the thing that Neuberger and Parker asked, which order did the decans go? These are the decans on the Zodiac, and you see the spaces, short and rising, long ascension, short ascension accounts for those gaps, mind the gap. So next one, next image. So this is the Coffin of Hakata, now in the Nubian Museum. Every few years, the precession of the equinox necessitated a shift in the alignment of the decans. By the Greco-Roman period, the decans are purely astrological, 3 per zodiac sign, and served as useful adjuncts for diagnosing illnesses in medical astrology. Here we have, on the Dendra Zodiac, the 3 decans of Leo, which was a fire sign. And what you can see, perhaps, are here, there is a fire determinative and another fire determinative for the 2 Horus decans. So, right, next slide, I think. On the Dendra Zodiac, the gender of the gods was fundamental to the Egyptians. Next one, that's all right. And they didn't alter this gender. Think how the Egyptians revered Sirius as feminine and beautiful, while in the outside world, Sirius was the rather ugly dog star. Egyptian sky gods could assume multifunctional roles, particularly the falcon god Horus, who appears on the Dendra Zodiac as planet Mars, the star Canopus, and the constellation Cygnus. Astronomy and astrology matured together. One stargazer priest who said he watched out for the heliacal rising of Venus was Hakhebi in the 2nd century BC, and he recorded at the back of his statue that the planets were the gods who foretold the future. So we go to symbols now, I think. Yes, so the car symbol. We have the car symbol, there's the bar, the soul, and the spirit. But the car with the hands, this is a car wooden statue. It isn't King Hor, but he's car, he's double, he's doppelganger. So this is King Hor from 1700 BC, and it shows the motif of the 2 raised hands, arms, which became the sign for Gemini. So basically, astrology comprises its own language, particularly in the utilization of symbols. Without even thinking about it, we employ some of its descriptive language: martial for the planet Mars, jovial for the planet Jupiter, and Saturnian for the planet Saturn. Some astrology glyphs today can trace their origin to Egyptian hieroglyphs. So we have the sun, which is Gardner's N5, Gemini, I've just explained, Aquarius is the water sign, and the insignia of Neith for Cancer. So here we have the insignia for Neith on the right-hand slide. For astrologers, the sign of the twins, Gemini, ruling the hands, the arms, and also the lungs. So even earlier in the pyramid text utterance 215, and that's 220 BC, 2 sons of Horus are recorded as ruling the forearms. One of these sons is the Babu god Hapi, who elsewhere regarding internal organs placed in the canopic jars is the protective deity for the embalmed lungs, showing from the British Museum the canopic jars. This is the 21st dynasty. So as I've said, to the right, we see the Cancer symbol on the goddess Neith's head. from Prince Ka-Mwazet's tomb, son of Ramses III in the Valley of the Queens. As the compass point cardinal goddess, which equates with the zodiac sign Cancer, Neith presided over the canopic jar that contained the embalmed stomach. And in medical astrology, the stomach is ruled by the cardinal zodiac sign Cancer. So there's a long connection there. So we go for an alchemy connection. It's from an early Greek manuscript. Astrology was conducted at a great level of secrecy, as was alchemy. In Egyptian illustrations, one shared motif is the Urubus. This enigmatic symbol is known from the Old Kingdom, as in pyramid text, utterance 393. It is the serpent seizing its tail with its head. They say his end is his beginning, and of course it is classically depicted in the alchemical treatises. So in the Cairo Museum, or maybe it's been moved, this is the second golden shrine of King Tutankhamun. The Urubus around the head and the foot, and that's 1327 BC. Just wanted to remark that it maybe is called the Mehen, and the text there, it's a strange text. It's he who hides the hours. And the next slide we see just further down, it's Tutankhamun's foot with the Urubus circle around it. Most curious. So the next slide is the Urubus again in a papyrus from the 21st dynasty. And there are zodiac type things with this. It's either the young sun inside the Urubus, or it's Spica, the constellation for the beautiful boy, the moon, the Leos, the baboon. So the zodiac does kind of marry a little bit with astrology symbols. So what are we up to? Oh yes, in one Latin Hermetic treatise, the Urubus is described as an indication that the course of the year in the zodiac is completed. Now this is from the Dakar Oasis. The artwork isn't accurate because where I've done the blue line, it is actually, when you go to the tomb, it's an Urubus, and they've left that off. So you do always need accurate line drawings. And this bizarre type of horoscope was described, thought by Pingree, Neuberger, and Parker as belonging to the religion of Mithras. Maybe, maybe not. So, next one. So art as a language. So we have here Leo, and the red dot is Regulus, and it's off the ceiling of Seti I's tomb, KV 17. To the right is a comet that occurred in medieval times in Leo, and so it indicates the days that the comet were observed at the different degrees in Leo. So this is just reading art, it tells you, if you read the picture. The next slide, I think, is it? Oh yes, and the next slide is again Leo. The one on the right is the 30 degrees of the sign Leo, and the sun underneath and Saturn underneath are both conjunct at 20 degrees Leo. And there's all this little symbolism in the picture. There's the sun, the king, Leo, Saturn, the bottom is Capricorn, he rules Capricorn, he devours his baby, she's holding in his hand. And if you go back to the slide on the left, you see that there is Regulus there, that's right, and probably 30 degrees underneath. So it was figured out at some stage. That's Papyrus, New Kingdom, from Papyrus of Ani. So where have I got to? Oh yes, thank you. So on top of the translations of Demotic script done by the marvelous professional linguist, Egyptian astrology revelation still requires some specialized knowledge to make sense of what has been translated. As befitting a secret craft, oftentimes these arcane texts hid cryptic messages, as demonstrated in Leptine's papyrus, the secret teachings of Eudoxus. Astrology has always been regarded as the royal art, hence me giving you these lion images. So we go to a picture and a horoscope of Count Albrecht von Wellenstein. He loved astrologers, and on the left, he's with an astrologer reading his horoscope. That astrologer is not the one who did his horoscope on the right, which was done by the famous Johannes Kepler, and he predicted the Count's future military successes and the year of his murder. So the format that Kepler used for a horoscope, the square horoscope, does look like what some scenes you see in the Book of the Dead papyrus, but this is just a speculation on my part. So we move on to what's important in a horoscope. Yes, the heyday of astrology was in the Greco-Roman period, and it did not form overnight. It had to evolve, as I said earlier. So in the papyri of surviving horoscopes, the word horoscopus correctly means the rising sign or the ascendant. The ascendant is the rising degree of the ecliptic on the eastern horizon for a particular location and time. On a horoscope that the Hermopolis astrologer Pitenius wrote up in 81 CE, it's in the British Library, he calls the ascendant the rudder. Now, there are plenty of earlier Egyptian art which shows emphasis on rudders on the mystical boats used to sail in the afterlife waters. Now we go to, there's no image of the Great Pyramid, but we mention it. From the beginning, the concept of the horizon, the ascendant, was of the utmost importance to the Egyptians. Indeed, the Great Pyramid was formerly called the Horizon of Khufu. Here I would playfully suggest a type of astro mapping. You only need to put your ruler and compass over an accurate Giza plateau sitemap, and lo, those who do local space astrology techniques will see what I mean. So we come to what is called the midheaven. Right, at the end of the Old Kingdom, next to the step pyramid, this particular picture is on the outside of Ni Ankh Pepi, and that's 2180 BC. If the horizon he stands on is 7 degrees Gemini, the angled long staff Nikanki Pepi holds 100 degrees away points to a 20-degree Aquarius. This is the previous picture, and me now scribbling all over it. So, could this be an early depiction of the midheaven? The midheaven is an important line that figures in a horoscope. It's called the medium coli. And it is not what astronomers call the zenith, but the precise south point of the horoscope. So this, is it next slide? This hidden geometry tradition carried on for a long time. So we're now in the 30th dynasty tomb of Osiris. And there's a couple of images. I'm just showing the one for now. he leans on his midheaven staff with additional clue of sowing. So we know the season, the astronomical year. And the surrounding art can tell you that in another scene, it's spring carving time. And when you measure the horizon and the angle of the staff, you get some interesting degrees forming. And Osiris probably was the famous astrologer, high priest. And what you do, you just get your protractor and measure the angle of the degrees between the horizon and the midheaven. And then you can estimate the zodiacal degrees down from the midheaven to the ascendant for that latitude. So we move on to the zodiac. Okay, the zodiac. You all know the zodiac. It's this it's the belt, and the inside the belt is the 7 wanderers. That's the sun and the moon and the planets. And then the very heart is your location. And it's considered living beings. The scales, Gordon said, aren't living beings, but in Egypt, when you come to it, the scales incorporate either the born sun or a Horus bird. So yes, they did do it, the scales as a living being. So I think that's self-explanatory. Where am I up to? So astrology in the popular imagination came into its own around the 5th century BC with the Greeks' adoption of the Babylonian zodiac. Originally, the zodiac created in the 1st millennium BCE provided the means for the Babylonians to organize their astronomical observations and calculations. The adapted Greek zodiac we and Napoleon's savants recognized appeared in the writing of Aratus. He died in 239 BC, whose astronomy poetry would have been familiar fare to the successors of Alexander the Great, the culturally hungry Ptolemaic kings who set up in Egypt learning institutes of museum and libraries. The zodiac, a belt of some 9 degrees wide on each living side of the ecliptic, is the circle or belt of living beings. A pair of scales, a woman, we've said all that. And I also said the scales don't seem to be living, but in the middle of the balance, there is a child in the bubble on the dendrozodiacs, and on the 2 zodiacs that are Threbus, the middle of the scales has a raptor bird in the bubble. The signs of the zodiac are 12ths of the ecliptic, and not to be confused with the zodiac constellations, which have different sizes. The contrived 12 arc divisions of 30 degrees of the zodiac signs have their point of beginning, or those in the northern hemisphere, excuse me, at the spring equinox. That's 0 degrees Aries, and it's the starting point of the decans. Right. So where are we up to? Right, Nectanebo, known as the astrologer king. Yes, here we are. This picture I took in the Metropolitan Museum. Curious offering he makes. 7 zones, I think. The legendary inventors of astrology were the Egyptian king, King Nekhepso, and his priest, high priest, Osiris. What happened?
No, carry on.
In translated demotic fragments attributed to Nekhepso and Osiris, Professor Stephen Hillian says the Egyptians had additional to a horoscope for an individual 9 other thematic categories of astrology. There is much debate among Egyptologists as to the identity of this pharaoh. My research favours Nectanebo II and the high priest at Hermopolis, which is Tuna or Gebel, at Osiris as the stargazing dream team. Oh, I've written an article about it, and it's coming soon in an astrological research journal. So, is it next slide, please?
Well, you tell me.
Yes, go on. The dream of Nectanebo. Oh, we come to Alexander the Great. Right. Right. And maybe the next slide. Oh, let's go. Okay. This is a little bit of a table. Nectanebo had a dream. The Egyptians recorded the full moon date of a dream that Pharaoh Nectanebo had prior to the Second Persian invasion in 343 BC. It is possible for an astrologer today to turn the dream into a mundane horoscope chart. The rectified data has the sun at 7 degrees Cancer opposite the moon 7 degrees Capricorn. The node was at 24 Taurus. Venus was 25 Cancer and Jupiter 25 Libra. In an earlier established legend, Alexander the Great declared that he was the son of Nectanebo II. However, at the time when Nectanebo II was having to flee Egypt, Alexander in Macedonia was already grown to a youth of 13 years of age. Comparing Alexander the Great's date of birth criteria to the earlier Egyptian recorded date for Nectanebo's dream, there are striking astronomy data coincidences. Zodiac degrees in exactitude connect the night of the prophetic dream of Nectanebo, when the sun was 7 degrees Cancer, opposed by the moon 7 degrees Capricorn, to Egypt's famous hero ruler. Alexander's sun at 25 degrees Cancer was sextile the node, a fated quality. Conjunct the Venus, square the Jupiter of the dream event chart. And when Alexander was born, Mercury was 7 degrees Cancer, opposed by a yet to be discovered planet Uranus at 7 degrees Capricorn. Some modern astrologers attribute stuff connected with magic to the maybe characteristics of the planet Uranus. And to be sure, 7 degrees Cancer was a critical degree for Alexander, especially at the time of his death, when transit Mercury happened at 7 degrees Cancer on his natal Mercury at 7 degrees Cancer. So you couldn't really make these numbers up. So next one. Oh, a map. We have to have a talk with a map. So I'm really talking about the Athribis Zodiac tombs opposite the river. You can see on the map, there are some tombs that haven't been documented or published, waiting rediscovery, but there are more. Dendra is further down the road, and to orientate you, Luxor is further south. So this is the area, the epicenter. So yes, a few Greco-Roman tombs with circular zodiacs and very likely horoscopes in the Akhmin area. And the forgotten ones are in the cemetery at El Salamuni. They have never been published, but I'm assured they're there. According to the expert Nubiga, the oldest known horoscope found in Babylon, and it was written in cuneiform and it was cast for 263, well over 200 years before Egyptians were casting horoscopes, according to Nubiga. It is worth remembering that these Babylonian horoscope, this Babylonian date and others subsequently known, all date some 60 years after the conqueror Alexander the Great had brought to Babylonia in his entourage individual sky diviners from Egypt and India. So here we are. This is one of my horoscopes from a Threbus that I've worked on. More water, excuse me. And I've given you the date that I worked out. It's 39 BC. So the prevailing view of the earliest known horoscope in Egypt, written on papyrus in Demotic, is the date of 38 BC, provided by Neuberger and Parker. These esteemed scholars did the lion's share of artfully documenting Egyptian astronomy and horoscopes in their definitive tomes of the 1960s, the Egyptian astronomical text, but not infallible. Sadly, researchers in the 2020s are too in awe of Neuberger and Parker's authority to correct any mistakes or flag up anomalies. And the next slide is even older and probably to be the father. They weren't brothers, in my opinion. So near the temple of Cleopatra's child, Ptolemy, the 15th Caesarian at Threbus, is a tomb for two men, purported to be brothers, with their respective horoscopes in colour on the ceiling. Flinders Petrie documented the Zodiacs in 1908, and his dabble into astrology backdating came up with the births occurring in the years 52 and 59 AD, in the reign of Nero. Neuberger and Parker saw fit to correct Petrie's dates for the Threbus horoscopes, in my view, worsening the horoscope date by making them almost a century later. They gave the dates of 141, 148, subjects therefore born in the reign of Antonius Pius, and it remains unchallenged and quotable by scholars because Neuberger and Parker said so. So what went wrong? The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are the underlings. Right. Okay. Next. The fault by Petrie and Neuberger and Parker in getting the date of the Threbus horoscopes so wrong came about by their failure to correctly identify the Egyptian planets and to confirm that the dates they published sensibly matched the activities of the nearby temple construction. Context is everything. Given it was Cleopatra's son Caesarian temple at Threbus, the astrologer priests buried at Threbus were likely colleagues of the astrologer priest at Dendra, putting up the astronomical ceilings on behalf of Cleopatra. So another vexation I shall point out to you, you've seen this slide before, is correcting ancient work. This was the horoscope of the 1st of April, 81 CE. The report done by the astrologer Petenius from Tuner Gabel, Neuberger and Van Hoosen overrode that the client was born when the midheaven was at a right angle to the ascendant, as written in the papyrus, opting instead for a recalculation of the midheaven, which meant Petenius's client could only be born in Alexandria rather than somewhere further south, say Nubia. A casual look by any astrologer might quickly note that such a birthplace harbored many dangers and really best suggest that this client move away northwards into Egypt. So I said that Petrie, Neuberger and Parker got all the planets wrong. They got all of them wrong. They only got the sun and the moon right. I'm not taking you through all the planets. I'm just going to show Mercury, the tricky problem of Mercury. If you go into the Louvre, you'll see off the Dendra Zodiac, it's on the left, that they identify this two-headed man as Venus. Not so. Petrie and Neuberger and Parker identified this two-headed man in Pisces from Epimenes as Venus, not Venus, it's a man. Wrong again. In the other Threbus tomb, you can see that it's a man. It's not so clear. And again, they say it's Venus. Well, it's not Venus. When you go to the Osiris Roman tomb in the Dakhla or the Oasis, Neuberger and Parker say, two-headed man, definitely Mercury. So 3 wrong, 1 right. And they did that with everything. Mercury, with Venus, Jupiter, Saturn. The only one they got right was Mars. So the Dendra so-called zodiacs. Finally, I give you the 2 so-called zodiacs in the Temple of Hathor at Dendra, which since discovery in 1799 by the French, have been exceedingly slow to give up their secrets. The vibrantly coloured linear half zodiacs of the hyperstyle ceiling, identified as Zodiac E, was dated by Neuberger and Parker to the reign of Tiberius, which gives us 14 to 37 CE. Since the marvelous restoration work, allowing one to see better the constellations and datable planets, I can tell you it's not a horoscope, but nevertheless a very real astronomical event which occurred towards the end of the reign of the Ptolemies, and are very much in tune with the religious ethos of Hathor's temple. So the Dendra zodiac, this is what you see of it in the Louvre. The circular stone-carved zodiac from the temple's roof, the Osiris Chapel, has been exhibited in the Louvre for 102 years. Much nonsense has been written about it. The doyens, Neuberger and Parker, referred to it as Zodiac B, and they wrote it off by a questionable pronouncement that the Dendra zodiac was merely constructed around 30 BC to celebrate 5 planets in exaltation, an astrological technique for which they gave no citation. As I argued it in my dissertation in 2004, this dubious claim cannot be verified, mostly because Neuberger and Parker identified the Dendra planets wrongly. And why ignore the exaltation of the sun and moon? I wrote in my thesis, my discovery, and formally published in 2012 that the ascendant or rising sign of the Dendra zodiac rose, next slide, rose in
Back here.
No. Here, there's that one. Sorry, rose in Gemini. Okay. And it says it's the rising sign because the sign, the hieroglyph sign for the East is what in the Roman, Greco-Roman period of Egypt, they used as the sign for the ascendant in horoscopes. And it has to be a horoscope. And I also discovered that there was a lunar node represented by the crocodile god Sobek. Image 36. We're almost there.
36.
Yeah. Oh, why did I? Oh, yes.
Hang on.
Koval. Sorry, folks.
There's 36.
Oh, the official date, yes. Sylvie Koval and Eric Oberg, a physicist, and the Louvre panel are adamant that the Dendra zodiac depicts 2 eclipses 6 months apart near the start of Cleopatra's reign. As the node is nowhere near the sun and moon, this cannot be true. With several years of low Nile floods, it was a fraught time politically, so why bother casting so elaborately in stone those baleful eclipses of 51, 52 BC? And where in Egyptian history was there a precedent for such an idea? So, next slide. 38. Got to 38. Oh, yes. So what you have to do is you have to put all these degrees around your working chart of the horoscope. Degrees were known by the 2nd century BC. In 2008, a comprehensive write-up by the Egyptology astronomers Lull and Belmonte, they concluded the round Dendra zodiac is not a precise depiction of the sky, but a highly symbolic representation of the firmament. However, my opinion is to the contrary. This one, 30. Oh, yes. The sign of Gemini. So we move on to the next one. So here we are. Then and now. For its day in the 1st century BC, the Dendra zodiac is as accurate a sky map as one might come across printed in the newspaper showing the astronomy of the month. The stars and constellations and the Egyptian mythology created around them belong in another presentation devoted to the datable astronomy of the Dendra zodiac. For now, I leave you with my appreciation of what the Dendra zodiac is. In the heyday of Hipparchus, amid the murder and mayhem in the reigns of the late Ptolemy pharaohs, it's a work of bloody genius. Let us not forget the debt we owe to the Egyptian-born Claudius Ptolemaeus, polymath and Serapis priest, who left us his Tetrabiblos, 4 volumes of standard astrology theory and practice. We should wonder at his debt to the astronomy and astrology of Dendra Temple, for Claudius Ptolemaeus came 150 to 200 years after Dendra's construction and display. And that's it. Any questions?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Ros. That was really interesting. I'm especially interested to learn about the Gemini symbol being represented by the sign for car. When did that start happening, if they were thought of as being Shu and Tefnut as well?
I don't know. I think they reckoned Shu and Tefnut belonged to the constellation of Gemini, because the twins. The thing that the astrologers gave us at the end in the Hellenistic time was that Egypt was 2 lands. So Egypt Rises, that's what I was calling my book, Egypt Rises, because I think Gemini was one of the most important signs for ancient Egypt. Don't know if I've answered your question.
Were there particularly auspicious signs? Was there a relationship? Can we see a relationship with Vedic astrology in India today?
Yes. I think India was sympathetic to Egyptian astrology because after Alexander the Great, the Indians sent ambassadors to Egypt, and they, because of graffiti, we know, they went right down to Abu Simbel, the Indians, and the fact that to this day, the decans of Egypt are used in Hindu astrology. So I think they really did adapt a lot of Egyptian stuff in India. But in India, they work on sidereal zodiac, whereas, you know, I'm talking about tropical astrology. So probably Hindu astrology is the truest astrology that links to Egypt. But sympathetic.
You were talking about the symbol for Cancer coming from the sign for Neith.
Yes.
What is the sign for Neith? Because it doesn't.
Well,
proud, does it?
she had two signs. She had cross spears.
Mhm.
But I think that one that looks like the glyph for Cancer had been used earlier, and then Neith had the cross, the shield, and the two cross spears, crossed arrows, and then went back, as we saw in the late New Kingdom, went back to having that sign that I reckon looks like the glyph for Cancer, and certainly, she must be the goddess of the sign Cancer in the Egyptian compass points.
Is there any evidence in the coffins of the deceased person's horoscope being painted? Because I've seen what look like horoscope symbols in some of the mummy cases in the British Museum.
Yes, that was a fashion in the Roman period for some. In fact, there's a family, the Sota family, who like to put the zodiac around them. I don't think it's. I think it's just a straight horoscope, a straight zodiac. Not. I don't think you can really figure out either the date of birth or the date of death from. They just liked the zodiac fashion.
Beth has just asked, do you have a book available, or do you have one planned?
Yes. It's been coming for years and years and years. I've done all the research. It's 30 years of research. It's I keep going off on tangents, but it's pretty well done. I just need a publisher, or I shall have to self-publish it. But
I'll put you in touch with the publisher, Ros.
Oh, good. Okay. But yeah, I'm ready to go. I think I could. It'll be a wrap this year, because I've done everything. I've done my dating. I'm happy with the dating, and I've worked out all the astronomy on the Dendra zodiac. Some astronomy is omitted because of it clashes with ideas that they had. The Egyptians were into the path of the sun, and they didn't want the path of the sun hindered in any way. And so precession was a big problem for them to deal with religiously. They spotted it a lot earlier than people reckon they did, but they had to explain it. But I think I'm ready for putting it all down.
I imagine that you've done your own Egyptian horoscope, have you, Ros? Do you do people's Egyptian horoscopes?
I don't. Yes, I can read a horoscope, and I do my children's horoscopes, but they don't want to know. Wisely so. Yeah. No. It's. I enjoy it, but I never earned a living by reading horoscopes.
Well, maybe you can once you have your book published.
Yeah, I don't know. Just Egyptology. Margaret Murray could do Egyptology, lady who lived to be 100. Mm-hmm. She could do horoscope readings. So it's interesting, but she kept quiet about it. But yeah.
Do you still feel like you have to keep quiet about it when you're in academic Egyptology circles?
Not anymore, because now I'm an eccentric old lady, so it doesn't matter. I have lovely friends in Egyptology, and they just forgive my eccentricities, as my daughters do, I hope. And I've got a cat in the audience, isn't she lovely? She's called Holly. Holly Alex Park. I've had a cat, and I've had a teddy bear, and I've had
Sharon asks, how did you discover the link between the gaps in the decans relating to the long and short ascension?
By putting the degrees of the zodiac around it, and you could just see it all folds lovely into place. Yeah, easy. Yeah.
She says, did you start from Aries or Cancer?
Aries, because at that time everything was all lined up where you know it's Roman, so yeah.
Did they have any recognition of the constellation Ophiuchus?
Yes, probably. I think they did. I think
to the Arubios, maybe.
Yeah. I reckon in their thank you, Gordon, for tea. Yeah, in the astronomy, because I think Libra. They were a bit quiet about it. They started their year in Libra, and I think they back in the New Kingdom. Yeah. I've got to refresh. Sennemut's tomb and everything. It will be the last for me to tackle, because I'm still not happy about what I've got to say there in the astronomy. But the Ramesside astronomy is quite revealing. The when the priests were on the temple roofs observing the astronomy for a year, that's quite exciting.
Did they start the new year with the rising of Sopdet? Am I right in thinking that was their name for Sirius?
Yeah.
So that would have been in Cancer, wouldn't it?
Is it there?
I thought that the Egyptian New Year is marked by the rising of Sopdet, which is the beginning of the inundation, which usually happens around July at some point.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I hate the calendar. I
like the idea of having this kind of celestial map of our seasonal cycles. You mentioned Spica just briefly, and I know that Spica was important to the Minoans as well, and that they were a solar worshipping culture. So is there anything else about Spica? Because I think that's in Minoan cosmology, it's the grain of wheat in the hand of the maiden, and is tied in with the Alephsian mysteries, or the precursor to the Alephsian mysteries in Manoa. So did they time their mysteries to Isis or Osiris with any celestial event in particular?
Not sure. Don't think so. No. Oh, you ask difficult questions.
There's a few more questions here. There's someone mentioning. Someone asked a question about Anatolia. I don't know if you've noticed any of the symbology at somewhere like Göbekli Tepe echoing the horoscopes or the astrological symbols in Egypt.
Well, it's exciting archaeology over there, but I wouldn't like to go there. I think I would say there's stuff yet to come forward in Israel. I've dug in Israel, and I think there's earlier origins in Israel than people recognize. And I think they shared a lot with Egypt.
Yeah, I think so. Is that the Canaan region where that culture was? They had a hieroglyphic system as well, I think.
I don't know. I was thinking of there's a place. Oh, it's gone. I'll have to look up my old notes.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions at all that they'd like to ask Ros? You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask Ros yourself.
Or message me on Twitter if you think of something later on, and I can look up my
I have a
notes.
quick question, Roz.
Hello, John.
Hello, it's so good to see you. There was an announcement of a new finding in Egypt, which I haven't had a chance to read about yet. It was just just last week, I think. And have you had a chance to look into that yet? Because I wonder if I don't know what type of finding it is. I just know that they're saying it's one of the biggest finds in a very long time. It's near Luxor.
Yes.
I just wonder if there's any astrological findings there.
Oh no, I don't think so. No, Christian would probably answer that question better.
Yes, that's they found part of the town north of Melkata. So it's reign of Amenhotep III. And I think it's mostly workshops. I know there's a sculptor's workshop there, tons of pottery. None of the finds seem to have anything to do with what you're talking about.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I think really, if you want astrology, you just have to sort of be content with it being in the Greco-Roman period. All the other little bits, I suggested as just part of the evolution of it all being fully formed in the Greco-Roman period. It didn't happen overnight. It had to evolve. And so that's why I took things back a bit. And then once you're into where everything is documented in papyrus, then you're on safe grounds. But, really, astrology as we know it today is just, in the Greek period.
Paula,
Thank
did you
you.
have a question that you wanted to ask?
Go on, Paula.
Let me unmute myself. Yes, I was trying to answer the question about the new findings. I don't think there's any astrological content in it because it's like John said and Kristen better said, workshops, village, the place where the workers lived, tons of personal objects found in each of the house. It has the houses, the house ruins, the walls. I've seen some videos of it. So I don't think it has inscriptions. It does have objects with inscriptions, but it's personal stuff that the people had in their houses, not really walls with hieroglyphic text, nothing about that. So, oh, and about the astrological content, you might also, those of you who can read German, expect a great book by Joachim Quack that is coming out with the study of the deacons. I think he has stuff from the New Kingdom in it, but I am not sure which tomb or which objects he's studying. I know that he was studying a papyrus from the Metropolitan Museum of Art regarding that, but all the sources he has for the book, I don't know of it all. So you might expect the book. It's really good coming out, I think, for 2021.
That'll be exciting. He's much in favor of
Yes.
astrology in early Egypt. So it's a shame it's in German for for us.
Oh, but it has lots of drawings and explanations
Yeah.
with the name of the planets and the deacons, and we all know the name, so it's not difficult.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Well, I should look forward to that.
Right, okay. Ros, I shall let you go. Gwyneth says that you can read her chart anytime, but she doesn't know what time she was born. Does that make her, I mean, I know it does make
I'm sorry, I work to 4 minutes of accuracy. You know, I can rectify Alexander the Great because he had a short life, born and died. So that's easy to rectify.
Mhm.
Oh, Gwyneth. Ah.
I'll miss out then.
Just to let everyone know, we've got another session later on today at 6 p.m. with Joanne Backhouse, and she's going to be talking about women in pre-dynastic Egypt. And I've got a couple more Egyptology talks booked, one with Lucia Garlin and one with Aidan Dodson. And they are, I think, the 1st of May and the 19th of June. So they are a co-presentation between myself and the Ramesses, which is the Rainham and Medway and Swale Egypt Society. So please do check some of our future events out. And thank you so much to everyone for coming along this afternoon. And especially thanks to you, Ros, that was excellent. And I will send you information about a publisher that I think will be perfect for you. And I look forward to reading your book as soon as it comes out.
Thank you. Well, thank you for organizing it, and thank you, friends, for coming. And, you know, so.
That was wonderful.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Roz. Thank you. What wonderful research. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Kristen. Paula.
Hi,
Thank you.
Roz. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks, Roz.
Thank
Click on leave.
Thanks very much, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye. Enjoy your lasagna, Ros and Gordon. See ya.